Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunath Tanvitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Pahima Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Haraye Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Hari Haraye Namaha. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we're getting close to the midway point of this chapter. Scene number 14 is entitled Shad Darshana. Prabhupada begins this section by saying that there are different kinds of philosophers who have tried to understand the Supreme Source by their mental speculation. There are generally 6 kinds of mental speculators, and they are called Shad Darshana. Most of these philosophers are impersonalists and are known as Mayavadis. Every one of them has tried to establish his own opinion, although they have all later compromised and stated that all opinions lead to the same goal, and therefore every opinion is valid. However, according to the prayers of the personified Vedas, none of them are valid because their process of knowledge is created within the temporary material world. They have thus missed the real point. The real point is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Absolute Truth can be understood only by devotional service. Now, we studied that point when we had our Bhagavad Gita seminar. All those months that we studied the Gita, I'm pretty sure I emphasized many times that the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is devotional service. 3 times, at least 3 times in the Gita, Krishna says, if you want to know me, devotional service. If you want to understand me, it's devotional service. You want to return to me, it's devotional service. That is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. So now, let's continue with today's chapter. One class of philosophers, who are known as Mimangshakas, represented by sages such as Jaimini, have concluded that everyone should be engaged in pious activities or prescribed duties, and that such activities will lead one to the highest perfection. However, this is contradicted in the 9th chapter of the Gita, where Lord Krishna says, Tri vidya mang somapa puta papa yagyaya rishtva svayar gating partayante te punyam asadya surendra lokam ashnanti divyan divi deva bhogan. Those who study the Vedas and drink the soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship Krishna indirectly. Purified of all sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Te tang bhuktva svarga lokam vishalam, shine punye martya lokam vishanti, evang trayi dharmam anuprappana gata gatang kama kama labante. And when they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Thus, by pious activities, one may be elevated to the heavenly planets. But as soon as one's accumulation of pious activities is used up, one has to leave the enjoyment of a higher standard of material prosperity in the heavenly planets and immediately come down again to these lower planets, where the duration of life is very short and where the standard of material happiness is of a lower grade. The exact words used in the Gita are Shine Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti. Therefore, the conclusion of the Mimamsaka philosophers that pious activities will lead one to the absolute truth is not valid. So this Mimamsaka philosophy was mentioned when we studied last year the Vrindavan Leela, when Nanda Maharaj wanted to perform the yearly sacrifice to Indradeva. And in order to convince his father not to worship Indra, we recall that at that time, when Krishna was 7 years old, he told his father a kind of materialistic philosophy, and it was mentioned, this word, Mimamsaka. Basically, the Mimamsaka philosophy, which we learned during that Govardhan Leela section, the Mimamsaka philosophy is pretty much what is accepted nowadays all over the world in the general corporate or material working environment. That in any corporation or company, you can be Muslim, you can be Jew, you can be Christian, Hindu, you can be atheist, doesn't matter. All the company cares about is get the job done. Those who get the job done, they don't care about your personal life. They just want you to get the job done. So the Mimamsaka philosopher says that whether there's a God or there's not a God really doesn't matter. Because even if there is a God, He cannot give you the results of your work unless you do the work. So, as was mentioned here, Prabhupada is pointing out the defect of the Mimamsaka philosophy, that materialistic or pious activities alone never lead one to realization of the absolute truth. Prabhupada now continues. Although a pure devotee is by nature inclined to pious activities, no one can attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by pious activities alone. pious activities may purify one of the contamination caused by ignorance and passion, but this is automatically attained by a devotee who is constantly engaged in hearing the transcendental message of Godhead in the form of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, or similar scriptures. From Bhagavad Gita we understand where Krishna says in chapter 9, Apichet su duracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhur eva sa mantavya samyag vyavasato hi saha. Meaning, even a person who is not up to the standard of pious activities, but who is absolutely engaged in devotional service, is to be considered well situated on the path of spiritual perfection. It is also said in Bhagavad Gita, Teshang satata yuktanang bhajatang priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogang tang yena mam upayanti ti. A person who is engaged in devotional service with love and faith is guided from within by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna himself as Param Atma, or the spiritual master sitting within one's heart, gives the devotee exact directions by which one can gradually go back to Godhead. The conclusion of the Mimamsaka philosophers is not actually the truth which can lead one to real understanding of the absolute truth. Prabhupada now continues. Similarly, there are Sankhya philosophers, metaphysicians, or material scientists who study this cosmic manifestation by their invented scientific method, but they do not recognize the supreme authority of God as the creator of the cosmic manifestation. Rather, they wrongly conclude that the reaction of material elements is the original cause of creation. Bhagavad Gita, however, does not accept this theory. It is clearly said therein, again in the 9th chapter, Mayad yakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. Behind the cosmic activities is the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This fact is corroborated by the Vedic injunction, Asad va idam agra asit. This means that the origin of the creation existed before the cosmic manifestation. Therefore, the material elements cannot be the cause of material creation alone. Although the material elements are accepted as material causes, the ultimate cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Bhagavad Gita says, therefore, that material nature works under the direction of Krishna. The conclusion of the atheistic Sankhya philosophy is that because the effects of the material worlds are temporary or illusory, that the cause is therefore also illusory. The Sankhya philosophers are in favor of voidism, but the actual fact is that the original cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this cosmic manifestation is the temporary manifestation of Krishna's material energy. The energy is eternal, but the manifestations of the material energy are temporary. And when this temporary manifestation is annihilated, its cause, namely the eternal existence of the spiritual world, continues as it is. Therefore, the spiritual world is called Sanatan Dham, the eternal abode. And that is mentioned by Krishna more than once in the Gita. Therefore, the conclusion of the Sankhya philosophy is therefore not valid. Now, this Sankhya philosophy was mentioned, Prabhupada's the atheistic, because there is a different kind of Sankhya philosophy which we can read about in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where in chapters 25 through 32, Lord Kapila explains the real, original, pure Sankhya philosophy. And his philosophy doesn't just deal with the 24 material elements, but also deals with the soul and also God. And in terms of Sankhya philosophy, God is referred to in terms of the time factor. Because in the Gita, clearly it is stated, where Krishna says, I am time, and I have come to destroy everything in this material world. So the time element is another representation of Krishna. Now we go to the next group of philosophers. Prabhupada says, then there are the philosophers headed by Gautama and Kanada. They have very minutely studied the cause and effect of the material elements and have ultimately come to the conclusion that atomic combination is the original cause of creation. Modern-day present material scientists also follow in the footsteps of Gautama and Kanada, who propound this theory of Paramanu Vad, or the philosophy of the atom. This theory, however, cannot be supported because the original cause of everything is simply not inert atoms. This is confirmed both in the Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as in the Vedas. For instance, in the Vedas it is stated, Eko Narayana Asit. Only Narayana existed before the creation. Srimad Bhagavatam and Vedanta Sutra also say that the original cause is sentient and both indirectly and directly cognizant of everything within this creation. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the original cause of everything. And Krishna also says, Mattak Sarvang Pravartate. From me, everything comes into existence. The fact that the original cause is sentient and is both indirectly and directly cognizant is mentioned by Vyasadeva in the very first shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada continues, therefore, atoms may form the basic combinations of material existence, but these atoms are generated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the philosophy of Gautama and Kanada cannot be supported. Now we go to the next one. Similarly, impersonalists headed by Ashtavakra and later on by Shankara Acharya accept the impersonal Brahman effulgence as the cause of everything. According to their theory, the material manifestation is temporary and unreal, whereas the impersonal Brahman effulgence is the reality. But this theory cannot be supported either. Why? Because Krishna himself, in the final verse of chapter 14 in the Gita, says, Brahmano hi pratishta aham amritasya vyayasya cha shasvatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya cha. So the first line, Brahmano hi pratishta aham, that line right there, that line contradicts the philosophy of Shankara and others who say that the ultimate feature of the absolute truth or the original cause of everything is the impersonal Brahman. This one line by Krishna, Brahmano hi pratishta aham, Krishna is saying, I am the cause of this Brahman. This Brahman effulgence rests on me, my body. So one should, I've said this many times in my preaching, one should not be spiritually dyslexic, because many people think that Krishna is a manifestation of the Brahman. But the opposite is true. By this line, Brahmano hi pratishta aham, he certainly, pratishta aham, resting on me, is Brahman. Prabhupada continues, this Brahman effulgence is resting on Krishna's personality. This is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, that the Brahman effulgence is the personal bodily rays of Krishna. As such, impersonal Brahman cannot be the original cause of the cosmic manifestation. No, the original cause is the all-perfect, sentient personality of Godhead, Govinda. The most dangerous theory of the impersonalists is that they say when God comes as an incarnation, he accepts a material body created by the three modes of material nature. This Mayavadi theory has been condemned by Lord Chaitanya as the most offensive. Lord Chaitanya has said quite clearly, Mayavadi Krishna aparadi, prakrita kariya mane Vishnu kalevara, Vishnu ninda ar nahi ihara upara. Lord Chaitanya taught that anyone who accepts the transcendental body of the personality of Godhead, thinking that that body is made of material nature, commits the greatest offense at the lotus feet of Vishnu. Similarly, Krishna says in Gita, once again in chapter 9, Avajananti mang mudha, manushing tanum ashritam, parang bhavam ajananto, mama bhuta maheshwaram. Only fools and rascals deride the personality of Godhead when Krishna descends in the human form. In this verse, the word mudha means fools and rascals. Lord Krishna, Lord Ramachandra, and Lord Chaitanya actually moved within human society as so-called human beings, but they were actually God himself. So the personified Vedas condemn the impersonal conception as a gross misrepresentation. In the Brahma Samhita, the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead possesses a spiritual body, not a material body. Krishna can enjoy anything through any part of his body, and therefore Krishna is omnipotent. The limbs of a material body that you and I have can perform only a particular function, just as hands can hold, but hands cannot see or hear. But because the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is made of Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, or Sachit Ananda Vigraha, Krishna can enjoy anything and do everything with any of his limbs. Acceptance of the spiritual body of Lord Krishna as material is dictated by the tendency to make the Supreme Personality of Godhead equal to the conditioned soul in all respects. The conditioned soul has a material body. Therefore, if God also has a material body, then the impersonalistic theory that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are one and the same can very easily be propagandized. However, factually speaking, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes, he exhibits different pastimes, and yet there is no difference between his childish body, when Krishna is lying on the lap of his mother Yashoda, and Krishna's so-called grown-up body fighting with the demons. In Krishna's childhood body also, Krishna fought with demons such as Putana, Trinavarta, ila-sara, etc., with strength equal to that with which Krishna fought in his youth against demons like Dantavakra, Shishupala, and others. For instance, Krishna killed Putana when he was barely 1 month old. So it did not matter what the form of the body was, and even though the body of Krishna was 1 month old as a baby, Putana found out the hard way that that form of Krishna is still absolute, and as Prabhupada just said, omnipotent. In material life, as soon as a conditioned soul changes his or her body, one forgets everything of one's past body. But from Bhagavad Gita, we can understand. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava charjuna tani ahang veda sarvani natvang veta parantapa. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, Arjuna doubted Krishna when Krishna said at the beginning of chapter 4 that originally Krishna had spoken Gita to the sun god some millions of years before speaking to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But Arjuna doubted that and said to Krishna that you and I are contemporaries. So how is it that you spoke Bhagavad Gita millions of years ago to the sun god? And that's where this verse comes in. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava charjuna tanyahang veda sarvani natvang veta parantava. Krishna told Arjuna that both of them have had many different lifetimes. But Krishna said, Arjuna, I can remember all of my previous incarnations, you cannot. So there's the difference between an ordinary conditioned soul and God. Prabhupada writes, because Krishna has a Sachit Ananda body, Krishna did not forget instructing the sun god about Bhagavad Gita millions of years ago. Yasmat ksharam atitoham aksharad api chotama atosmi loke vedecha pratitta purushottama. This verse appears in chapter 15 of the Gita, which is entitled Purushottama Yoga. So this is very nice that we are in the month of Purushottama, and this topic has appeared in today's class. Prabhupada writes, Lord Krishna is therefore known as Purushottama because Krishna is transcendental to both material and spiritual existence. That Krishna is the cause of all causes means that Krishna is the cause of the spiritual world as well as the cause of the material world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is omnipotent and omniscient. Therefore, because a material body can be neither omnipotent nor omniscient, Lord Krishna's body surely is not material. At the end of chapter 15 of the Gita, Krishna points out that you can find two kinds of living entities: those who are fallible and those who are infallible. And Krishna pointed out in those final verses of chapter 15 that everyone in the material world is fallible, and everyone in the spiritual world is infallible. But then Krishna said, but I am beyond both of these. Krishna said, because I am beyond both the fallible and the infallible, therefore in the Vedas I am known as Purusha Uttama. Purusha means person, enjoyer, and Uttama means transcendental, spiritual, topmost. Those are different synonyms for Uttama. Uttama. Tama meaning darkness, Uttama, above, beyond the darkness. Prabhupada continues, the Mayavadi theory that the personality of Godhead comes within this material world with a material body cannot be supported by any means. And so it can be concluded that all the theories of the material philosophers are generated from the temporary illusory existence, like the conclusions in a dream. Such conclusions certainly cannot lead us to the absolute truth. The absolute truth can only be realized in devotional service. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Only by devotional service can one understand me. Srila Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, has composed a nice verse in this regard. Mithya Taraka Shukarka Sherita Mahavadandha Karnantara Brahmyam Manda Mater Amanda Mahimangs Tvad Jnana Vartmashputam Sriman Madhava Vamana Tri Nayana Sri Shankara Sri Pate Govindeti Muda Vadan Madhupate Muktas Kada Syam Ahang. My dear Lord Krishna, let others be engaged in false argument and dry speculation, theorizing upon their great philosophical theses. Let them loiter in the darkness of ignorance and illusion, falsely enjoying as if very learned scholars, although they are without knowledge of you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as I am concerned, I wish to be liberated simply by chanting the holy names of the all-beautiful Supreme Personality of Godhead, with such names as Vamana, Trinayana, Sankarshana, Sripati, and Govinda. Simply by chanting Krishna's transcendental names, let me become free from the contamination of material existence. Namaste Narasimhaya Praklad Aklada Dayane Hiranya Kashi Puravakshaha Shilatankana Kalaye Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsinho Yato Yato Yami Tato Nrsinga Mahir Nrsingo Hridaye Nrsingo Nrsingham Ading Sharanang Prapadye Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranya Kashipu Kanubringam Keshavadita Naradi Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Arahadi Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Tat Sat